Don't go over that line.
Welcome everyone here this evening. At this time, I would call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have a prepared agenda before us. Just a few notes on this agenda. First off, following the regular meeting, the council will have a budget workshop that will begin at the conclusion of this meeting, the regular meeting, or at 7:00 p.m., whichever is earlier. I would also note that it's been requested that agenda item number 13 be removed from this agenda. Are there any other changes to the agenda this evening? If not, we'll operate under that agenda. The first item then is consider the approval of the minutes from both the special meetings as well as the regular meeting that were held on November 14th. The council does have the minutes of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Amanda to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We will move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We have two public hearings this evening. The first public hearing will be on the South Whitney Street reconstruction project from East College Drive to Jean Avenue. So we will conduct an improvement hearing. I will ask City Engineer, Director of Public Works to conduct a public hearing. When the public hearing is concluded, we'll consider the resolution that would order the improvement and the preparation of the plan. So just a note on the procedure at the public hearings. We'll ask Jason to make a brief presentation about the proposed project, and then we'll open up for any public comment from any audience member that is here or any member of the comments or of the council that's here. And then at the conclusion of all the public input, then we'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. So Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. Property owners in this project area have all been notified of this public hearing tonight. As you indicated, this is a complete reconstruction of South Whitney Street from East College Drive to Jean Avenue. Includes all utilities, all sidewalks, all street and curbing. We did invite all property owners to a public informational meeting on November 9th that was pretty well attended. We had good input at that meeting. The PIT committee has also discussed this project numerous times. If the council decides to proceed, you do have a resolution included that you'll need to pass to order the improvement and preparation of plans. At a future meeting, we'll pass a resolution to approve the construction plans and authorize us to advertise for bids. To proceed with this project, adoption requires a 4/5 vote of the council at this point. Engineering estimate for the project is $2.4 million at this point in time. Project is proposed to be assessed in accordance with our current special assessment policy. If you have any questions, I can try to help address them.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Are there any questions or input as part of the public hearing on this project? So,
Can I just speak from here, Bob?
no,
I've been accused of not being able to be heard.
because we're broadcast on public access, I have to ask you to come up to the podium and use the microphone. So, and also for the city clerk's record. Yep.
Hi, I'm Pat Supernaut. I reside at 400 East Marshall Street. And I came tonight to make the same plea that I did on November 9th to the engineering team. And that is to incorporate in the plans, in the design of the street, some way of controlling speed. Because having been in the neighborhood for 30 plus years, there's a lot of fast cars moving down Whitney. Doesn't make a difference whether it's in the morning and people going to Holy Redeemer, or it's on the weekend and people just look at it as And I don't have any data for you. I don't have a radar gun to say, hey, they're going 40. But there are a lot of fast-moving cars. And if you look at the homes that are along Whitney, and you look at the density of little kids, I don't have any little kids anymore. But there are a lot of little kids along that street. And it just is, so when we have the opportunity to do a redesign and to reconstruct the street, I just plea with you, or I implore you, to encourage the engineering team to figure out how to incorporate design elements that will control the speed on the street. So appreciate you listening to my rant, and Jim has heard me before about it, but so I appreciate the opportunity to give the input.
Okay, thank you, Pat. After all the input is heard, I'll ask the engineering department if you have anything you want to add at that point. Any other comments as part of the public hearing? Any input from the council as part of the public hearing?
The only input I'll put into it is I'll reinforce Pat, is not only just the speed on Whitney, but a lot of our stop signs. I know the one on East Marshall Street's ignored quite regularly. And I've watched people, because I sit on my front stoop and blow right through it. I know that's common throughout town. I don't know what the fix to that is. But since in the last couple of years, Pat is correct, we have some very large families and a lot of little kids.
Jason, I'll turn to you.
Yeah, thank you. That was input that we did here at the meeting. We do have those notes. We've started to discuss speed in the neighborhood as an engineering department. I know in the short term, the police department has helped by putting the speed trailer up in the neighborhood, which has been kind of an immediate reminder to residents. In the long term, the most effective form of speed control is narrowing the roads, if we're being honest. And on this particular street, we do not believe that we can narrow the road any more than it already is. With it being separated by the center island area, you have 20-foot road lanes, and we think that that's as narrow as we want to see them when you have parked traffic and vehicles that have to go by. And when you look at winter snow removal and the things that have to occur there, we need to make sure we have enough width to navigate. So narrowing is off the table. One thing that I'm hearing, Councilman Lozinski mentioned the East Marshall Street stop signs being ignored. As we look at that intersection as an engineering team, we can see how that could happen because East Marshall Street is paved through that intersection with the crown of the road going through the intersection. It feels like the through route where Whitney feels like the stop control route, but it's actually reversed. So we've looked at that and we want to give it a little more review and evaluation and consideration. But it is something that maybe we can review with our PIT committee and come back to council at a later date with some sort of control change at the Marshall and Whitney intersection, which is effectively halfway in between this reconstruct. It's 2 blocks in from College Drive and Jean Avenue. So possibly looking at either 4-way stop control or 2-way, but switching it. So Marshall is through and Whitney is stop controlled. Those are things that we've talked about. We're just not ready to state that any way is the right way to go about it at this point in time until we actually evaluate it further.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any follow-up comments from the council?
I have a question. When we look at interest rates, typically it says 6 to 7%. Where do we do questions? Where do those come from? And who do the interest payments go to? The city?
EJ, would you like to chime in on that one?
Sure. Our existing policy is that we charge 2% over what we get as a bonded rate. And the reason that we have a little bit of a difference in there is when we finance the project, we're financing everything. And obviously some people are going to prepay them right away, but we still have to make our bond payments. And it's to help cover those costs. So interest has been rising, obviously. We'll talk about it a little bit at the budget work session as far as what it was for us earlier this year and what we're anticipating already for next year. But it's just an estimate at this point. But it'd be a 2% onto whatever interest rate that we get assigned when we do a bond rating.
So then the city does get it. City gets the interest.
It comes to us to help us make the
Right, the payments.
payments on the project when we take out debt for the project.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Steve.
Second.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll now consider the resolution that would order any improvement in the preparation of the plans. Are there any questions about the resolution?
I move the resolution.
I would second that.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll note there's one abstention. We'll move then to the second public hearing. This would be a public hearing on the ordinance that would be related to the limited industrial district. I'll call on Ilya Gutman to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So the new comprehensive plan that was adopted recently introduced a new type of land use, mixed use. There are several, two mixed use, but in this case we are talking about mixed industrial and commercial use. We don't have the specific ordinance developed for that particular use. So when the new commercial project, potential commercial project came up in the area which was labeled as a mixed use in the future land use map, we had to come up with something. And we decided that one of the ways of doing this is to use the existing I-1 zoning district as a basis for the future mixed use district description and add business and professional offices to that limited industrial district, which will be part of how it will be changed later on for mixed use. So this is the change in front of you right now. It went through the Planning Commission and through the LNO and was introduced in the previous council meeting.
Okay. Again, as part of the public hearing, is there any input from the audience? Any input from either Legislative and Ordinance Committee or feedback from the Planning Commission?
There really wasn't. It was accepted and not a lot of discussion at the Planning Commission meeting.
And Eleanor was accepted unanimous too. I mean, it makes sense.
It does.
If there's no other input, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
I'll make
that.
a motion.
Second.
Amanda, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll now consider the adoption of the ordinance. Are there any questions about the wording of the ordinance? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make
So-
that one. Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll move then to the consent agenda. We'll bring the items on the consent agenda up on the screen, and they include consider the resolution accepting Jonathan Monterosa as a member of the PERA, Public Employee Police and Fire Plan. Consider the approval of the Joint Powers Agreement for the Drug Task Force. Consider the approval of a liquor license annual renewal for El Rancho and Brow Brothers. Consider the approval of an off-sale 3.2% malt liquor license for Family Dollar. Consider the authorization to declare a vehicle as surplus property for the Marshall Police Department, and consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for purposes of separate discussion? If not, is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Amanda, to approve all of the items on the consent agenda. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 10, first item of new business. This item is to call for a public hearing regarding the proposed property tax abatement for Rebound Partners. Lauren, are you going to handle this? Again, the action item is to call for a public hearing. We'll ask Lauren Deitz, our Economic Development Authority, to provide any background information. Lauren?
Thank you. Staff received an abatement request from the Rivosity Development Group, who is looking to build a Hampton Inn here in Marshall near the Red Baron Arena. The developer has requested a tax abatement assistance up to 15 years with an annual percentage decreases ranging from 80% to 30%. Based on financing assumptions and pro forma analysis by our municipal advisor, it was determined that financial assistance is warranted on the project based on total development costs, projected operating revenues, and current market conditions. The recommended level and amount of tax abatement assistance is anticipated to be between 5 and 8 years at a descending rate. Staff continues to work with Baker Tilly to determine the appropriate level of assistance for the abatement, pending some confirmation from the developers on their sources of funds. So at this time, we're just looking to call for public hearing with that amount to come prior to public notice.
Thank you, Lauren. Any questions on the request to call for a public hearing? Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, this is standard for the abatements that we've done in the past.
Lauren?
Correct, yes. We have brought this forward to the EDA board already for recommendation. They have approved an amount that we're comfortable with, but again, we're pending a further evaluation by our municipal advisor prior to publication of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Lauren? If not, I'd entertain a motion to call for a public hearing.
So moved.
I'll make a motion to call for a public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Amanda, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. We'll note one abstention. Agenda item number 11, consider the adoption of the ordinance that would rezone property at 100 through 120 London Road from a R1 one-family resident district to an I1 limited industrial district. Ilya.
Thank you, Mayor Council. This is rezoning which relates to a previous change of ordinance. This is where that new office building will be constructed. So, as I said, it was shown to be mixed use. We are trying to use the existing, we have to use the existing district description because we don't have anything describing the mixed use. So we are changing it to this I1 limited industrial district, which will allow now, after the change, adding of offices to allow construction of that building. That's why the rezoning is in front of you. It went through the public hearing in the Planning Commission, and it was introduced at last council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ilya. Any input from the public hearing at the Planning Commission?
There was one concerned citizen just about traffic. He lives in the residential area, but I think it was addressed that it's going to stay the higher density, not the density. The commercial will stay north. I don't even.
It will stay mostly north of the residential area down south.
So I confused myself. Sorry, but in that I think appease is just not going to infringe on the R1 properties. So cleared it up.
And
Mr. Mayor,
yes, go ahead, Pam Whitmore, City Attorney.
just a reminder that this is a rezoning from a residential district to industrial. And the state statutes require a heightened approval of that. So upon the motion, the vote has to be passed by 2/3, which for our council would be 5 of the 7 of you,
Okay, thank you, Pam.
at least. Yep.
Any other input or questions? Again, this location is on the northern end of London Road, directly across the street from Marshall Truss and Border States Electric. If there's no other input, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the zoning change. Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you, Ilya. We'll move then to the next agenda item, which is the Channel Parkway pavement replacement project. We have a change order.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
interrupt you for a moment? The summary ordinance for summary publication, that's the second part of the previous agenda item. And that also needs a motion and vote. And that's in the future, we can always do it in the same motion, but for purposes of if there wasn't a motion on it tonight.
Okay, so council has heard the city attorney. Any questions about that request? If not, is there a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion on that motion? The only discussion is that that was not listed on the agenda, so if there's no other discussion, we will move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. Now we'll continue with agenda item number 12, the Channel Parkway pavement replacement project. We have a change order, the final change order to consider, as well as the acknowledgement of the final pay request. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. This project was a 3-inch mill and overlay of Channel Parkway. There was also some associated ADA work and some minor median work and some valley gutter work. Work is all completed and in accordance with our specifications. You've got the final change order and acknowledgement of the final pay request in the packets. You can note that the final contract was $1,398,094.38. This is slightly over the original contract amount of $1,374,151.96. The overage was within our contingency policy. And I'll remind the council that we had a $1.25 million LRIP grant for this project. And the remaining funds were funded from the municipal state aid account.
Thank you, Jason. I don't know, I'd open up for any questions. I would just add to your comments that, you know, this is really an appropriate use for the grant source of funds, because this is really a road that serves the region. Lots of truck traffic, lots of grain from the agricultural area travels on this road, and it's a much, the improvement turned out very nice, and the contractor did great work. Any other questions for Jason or input or questions? If not, what are the wishes of the council on this change order?
I move that we approve the change order and result in the increase and to make a final payment to the contractor.
Motion by Craig, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion?
I just have a quick question. It's more for the public. We have a change order policy because obviously this is done and it was not approved before it was paid. Can you just touch on that change order policy quick so the public understands that, yes, we're voting on it, but it's already been paid for because of our policy?
Sure, yeah. To make sure we have financial certainty with our construction projects, we always finance an additional amount or plan for an additional amount of expense on the project. Up to 5% overage is allowed by our policy for our department to continue to keep the work moving, keep the contractor moving. So we can have some overages as they come up. There's always unforeseen circumstances in construction. It's really tough to be perfectly on quantity all the time. So that's really nice benefit for staff to keep things moving. We're usually pretty good at keeping it under the contract amount or near it. Slightly over here, there was some additional ADA work that had to be done, and some areas got a little bigger than we had planned, but all necessary work, and it turned out great.
And I think just for the record on that, it was 1.74 was the increase within that 5%.
Correct.
And I just think it's good to share that with the public to know that this is, our engineering department does a good job with these projects. Thank you, Jason. That's good information.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 14, consider a resolution to accept the results of the special election held on November 7, 2023. Sharon, can I call on you to talk through the procedure here?
Sure. We are required, following the approval of the referendum on November 7th, to follow for certain steps. And I know the memo details out the Department of Revenue's bulleted or numbered items that we need to return to them. One being the referendum question results. To provide that to Department of Revenue, we are proposing to have the council approve this or adopt this in resolution form. So the city clerk has prepared the resolution with the question and the results. And if adopted tonight, it'll be submitted to the Department of Revenue.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. And thank you for your attention to the details that are required with the state on the following the election. Any questions? If not, is there a motion for the resolution to accept the results of the special election?
I so move.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. Agenda item number 15 then is related. It's to consider the adoption of the ordinance that would amend the city's existing ordinance that provides for the sales tax and the extension of the existing sales tax. Any comments you want to make on this?
This was introduced at the November 14th meeting. The ordinance amendments align with the legislative amendments that were done in statute. As most of you are aware and remember, we revised current state statute. We didn't create a new authorization for sales tax since this was a sales tax extension. Kennedy and Graven did draft the ordinance revisions, and like the election results, if this is approved, we will submit this as well to the Department of Revenue.
Any questions?
I move adoption of the ordinance as amended.
Second.
By Craig, seconded by C. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. We'll close the voting. And the motion passes. And agenda item number 16 is the agreement to grant the city a license to use the parking facility for public parking and access to the future Marshall Aquatic Center. This was discussed by the council last summer. At that time, it was in draft form. The council made some suggestions, which have been incorporated into this agreement with the Schwann's company. So that brings the agreement before us. Sharon?
Yes. The purchase agreement stated that there would be an agreement for use of the Schwann's parking lot. Kennedy and Graven and Schwann's have reviewed the agreement and approved it as presented. It is a privilege to use the parking lot with the use of the land purchase. So as long as the aquatic center is in place, the use of the parking lot by the city will also be in place. The meaning at privilege, there will not be any funds exchanged for the use of this particular parking lot. And I don't know if I have anything to add, except we're really grateful for Schwann's working us through this agreement and agreeing to the terms and conditions, and for Kennedy and Graven's review.
Any questions on this?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, C.
Will the Sounds of Summer be able to use this parking lot at all, or no?
So what typically the Sounds of Summer have done is contacted Schwann's each year when there is a need, and I know that kind of changes annually, but my understanding is that's what they would do on an annual basis. So once we start construction, they'll have to evaluate what their location will be and then go from there. So
Thank you.
Yep.
good question, though.
Good question. The question that was discussed last summer was on if there was a need for rehabilitation of the parking lot in the future, and that is clarified in here, that if there's mill and overlay or pavement replacement, that is done at the owner's expense. The ordinary maintenance and painting, that type of thing would be at the city's expense.
Yep.
As well as, I suppose, snow removal, but that would be unlikely to do during the aquatic center season. So, any other questions? If not, what are the wishes of the council on this agreement?
Make a motion to approve the agreement.
Second?
Motion by Amanda, seconded by C. Discussion? The only discussion would be thank you for the city staff and Schwann's that worked together to bring this agreement. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Close the voting. And the motion does pass. We'll move then to council member board liaison reports. Craig?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Steve?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Amanda?
I'm reading through my EDA agenda. The Main Street Revitalization Grant, we were waiting for approvals, but it does sound like they're going to be starting to distribute funds, so that's exciting. And Marshall's is in final contracts, like it's being finalized, so that's exciting too. I know I've been asked about that a few times, so that's it.
Good. I have no report. John?
MMU did meet last week, and they're working on their budget, their annual budget, and so next month's meeting will be to approve the annual budget. That's about all they went over.
And C?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
You were at the Regional Development Commission.
I was, I presented there, so.
Very good.
And I heard you were awesome.
And Jim?
I have nothing.
We'll move then to council member individual items. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You all probably noticed with some emails forwarded from Sharon that there's been a discussion. I've been asked to kind of help input or to look into the, excuse me, whistle-free question again regarding the railroad and crossings. So I know that this is very complicated. I know it's possible, but there's a lot of steps and a lot of things to consider, but I think it's worthy. And I've been paying a lot of attention to it in the last probably 14 months. And I know that traffic is picked up, which is good. Burlington Northern's busy, but there's 5 whistle crossings within residential areas. And depending on the interpretation or view of the engineer, which I believe the railroad says that it's at the engineer's discretion how much whistle he needs to apply for safe crossings. And some of them at 3 or 4 in the morning when I don't see any headlights are pretty aggressive. So I'm not sure what cow, cat, or deer he's trying to get off the tracks, but there's been concerns expressed. One actually now has come through and put it in writing other than just an on-the-street question or discussion, but I do think it merits us looking into it. And I don't know what the answers are, but if we don't ask the questions, we don't get anywhere down the path. So I'm just going to put that out there that might be something else now that INT and others have nothing else to do, that we can grab that and look at it.
Let's have some follow-up discussion on that. Jason, you may want to comment, but I would just add with the completion of what's termed the Wilmer Y project, which is basically a bypass of Wilmer from the northwest line, that will increase the number of trains going through Marshall on the Wilmer to Sioux City line.
Yep. And I think that just looking at other railroads, and I know that they all operated a little bit differently, but it's all under the NTSB's rail authority. There are a number of communities in Wisconsin that operate under a couple of the Canadian railroads that are operating their tracks at 60 plus miles an hour that are no whistle zones, and their crossings don't look a whole lot different than ours. So I know it's possible. We just need to work through, and we have a good relationship with BNSF, and I think they're a pretty responsible carriers. So I look forward to the fact that I think we can make some progress on this. Maybe it's not all the crossings. I don't know that. But, we certainly need to take a look at it. And maybe it's more in training them, their engineers on application also.
You want to make any comments at this point?
Yeah, I can make a couple comments. This is a conversation that comes up every once in a while. We have had it a few times, and I've heard it from some residents as well. I think the first step that we would need to take is we would need to secure a consulting engineering firm to guide you through the process. About a year ago, I reached out to the Public Projects Office with BNSF and discussed quiet zones a little bit. And they would require a consulting engineer to be involved. The cost, we had a quote years ago closer to $25,000. I think now it would probably be closer to $50,000 of engineering fees to evaluate all the crossings, work through with the BNSF, MnDOT, FRA, all the different entities that you had to bring to the table and do all these process. But there is a path. They are required to work with you on it, and you do a study, you identify the improvements and what those costs might be, and you establish that, and then that's your guide going forward, and you can use it to complete projects that would make quiet crossings happen. For example, we do have good crossings, but maybe if there's a sidewalk there, the signal arm might have to have a pedestrian gate as well. There might be median changes that have to occur. There's a bunch of criteria that you'll be evaluating. I do think it'll be costly, but we could have conversations about if there are grant opportunities to help make some of these improvements. I'm not sure. We haven't looked into it, but I'd be happy to help secure engineering proposals if that's the direction we want to go. But we just should be warned that there is a cost to that. And I'd probably say just right now, $50,000 without having not gone through a process of getting numbers.
Sure. Jason, the other part of that discussion is, are there other participants? One of those crossings is on County Road 7, one is on Highway 19, State Highway.
Yeah.
One is on US Highway 59 and State Highway 68. So 3 of those crossings are not city roads, so.
Right.
Yes, and I'm happy to engage some of those other entities. I'm thinking of a grant opportunity that might work on the state highways, for example, that LPP funds, or maybe something we can look into. I don't believe MnDOT will pay for it, but maybe there's some funds we can access because it is a state highway. So with direction to get proposals, I can do that. We'd probably want to talk with administrator, finance, talk about how we find the money for that.
Sure. And especially because this is directly impacted by the Wilmer Y project, which MnDOT received a Tiger grant for the completion of that. So, yeah. Anything else, Craig?
No, actually I have one more thing too. And this is kind of a message out to citizens. I noticed that there's been a number of people that are doing some remodeling and cleaning up, and not sure if they don't have a clear understanding of how the garbage pickup works, but they're storing a lot of items on the curb and it doesn't have a free sign on it. So it looks like they're throwing it away, but it's not in their container for garbage. So if it's been out there for 3 or 4 garbage truck cycles and it's not getting picked up, you probably need to do something about it before the snow flies and before the city ends up having to send you a letter. So I'll just put that out there for people that are having confusion about how to move that off their boulevard.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Steve?
I have nothing.
Amanda?
Nothing.
Jim?
I got on my soapbox last week. I was walking down 3rd Street to go get the start of the story. You know where this is going, Craig. And, we stuck a lot of money into 3rd Street, and I'm going to ask our citizens, if you have a dog, pick up, because I took Sharon there, and I know we've contacted Jim Marshall. It was disgusting. We don't want our flower gardens downtown used as dog relief areas. And we had just redone 3rd Street. It's beautiful. It looks great, except that section. And I don't know who's doing it. And to all citizens out there, just be respectful. And Jim Marshall has been contacted, and I believe he's working on it. And I expressed to him, if you catch these people doing this, let's give them the fine to the full extent of the law, because this is ridiculous. It was literally full of dog poop. It's going to stink in the spring. And this is our downtown. Let's be proud of our town. And I always say this, we make ordinances because of the few, not the many. But that's why we end up making ordinances, because there's people out there who are idiots. Plain and simple. So that's all I got tonight. I was good thing I did this last Tuesday because they've been a lot more colorful.
I have nothing.
John? Nothing. The one thing I had, and I neglected, I should have said this last time, but the congratulations to Marshall girls volleyball and Marshall cross country, both were state champions, so congratulations to them. With that, we'll move on to staff reports. Sharon?
I just want to follow up a little bit on the railroad discussion. The original request via email actually got caught up in our spam folder, so we weren't able to respond until late yesterday. And I think originally it included Councilmember Lozinski and Schaefer appropriately on PI&T, but I will ensure that Councilmember Elkhorn also receives it as part of PI&T. Just did not get to it. I know Jason and I had a very late email exchange this afternoon, and yeah, we'll have to figure out financing and next best steps. But I appreciate the comments of the council on future traffic patterns and your experiences with what you're hearing out there. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Jason?
Caught me off guard. I don't have a lot. I'll just point out that on December 8th, so it would be next week, Friday, there's the Redwood River One Watershed, One Plan kickoff meeting. We were invited as a city marshal because most of our city drains into the Redwood River. It's a comprehensive watershed planning process that creates a 10-year plan. I or someone on our team will be attending all those meetings and representing the city. And if there's anybody else that would like to be a part of that, I can certainly make sure that we get all the meeting notices sent to you. So just have to let me know. I think that's all I've got.
Okay, any questions for Jason or Sharon? Not, Pam?
Just a reminder that you'll be seeing the rental ordinance in the near future. It needs to go through Ways and Means, and then the cannabis ordinances as well as with respect to use will be coming in the next month or so. So that's made it through all the committees. And then the Charter Commission has met and will be meeting again and filing the annual report.
Okay, very good. We'll move then to the remaining items on the agenda, which are information only, the Public Housing Commission minutes, the cash and investment report, our building permits, as well as the listing of upcoming meetings. Is there anything further to come forward at this meeting? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim to adjourn. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And we'll close the voting. And the motion does pass. We are adjourned. We will have a short recess, and then following that short recess, we will convene the budget workshop session.